Welcome to Social Work Sunday Tea. I am Shakia Houston. It's a great day to be alive and well. It is January 30th, 2022. We have a special guest here. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're here to talk about what we're going to talk about. If you'd like to introduce yourself, Mr. Stewart, it'll be great.
Yeah,
We appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Terence Stewart. I am a associate clinical social worker in LA. So right now, while I work primarily in community mental health, so I provide psychotherapy, primarily in the Watts and Compton area, and also what I do is I do see clients as well in Long Beach. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So I'm primarily just doing therapy. I'm a social worker at heart. Always, I'm a social worker at heart. I always say that. But at the moment right now, I'm doing therapy because I most definitely see a need in it. So that's my lane right now.
Absolutely. So what made you get into this field?
Yeah. So honestly, initially, I didn't want to get into therapy.
Okay.
Um, surprise,
Listen.
surprise. I didn't want to get into therapy. I didn't really, I think my introduction to therapy was not what therapy actually is. So,
Mhm.
what I always kind of saw therapy was kind of being something you had to do, not necessarily something you wanted to do. My first
Mhm.
introduction to like what therapy was or what it looked like was working with children, children who probably like just recently got out of juvenile hall or just got out of court, maybe like a diversion program. So for them to get like a lesser sentence, they'll be sent to our agency for like six months to a year. So that was kind of why I saw therapy. I didn't really see it like being too effective, just because it's one of those things, and I kind of talk about it a little bit later. Is like sometimes with the justice system, when you talk about therapy, it's more so something you have to do, not something you want to do. So that was kind of like I always saw that, and I was like, I'm not trying to do therapy. I'm not trying to do that. I had talked to one person that was a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I also talked to somebody that was a licensed clinical social worker. So, kind of how they broke it down to me was because at the time I took a few years after my undergrad just to like figure things out.
Yeah.
I had like tried to do the law school route, and I found out I don't like to read and write like that for a living. That's not my like I don't. That's it's boring to me.
Okay.
So I wanted to do something more interactive. So somebody pulled me aside, and there was another black male, which I was very blessed to meet him at the agency, and he was just kind of took me under his wing. Was like, hey, look, I think you would be a good social worker, like, because you have certain skills. I feel like that this
Yeah.
field needs. So at the time, he allowed me to kind of shout out him at the hospital. He was over his social services, and that was pretty cool. So after that, I was kind of sold. I was like, I want to get into like more hospital work. I want to run a hospital. I feel like that was pretty interesting. Um, but what kind of sold me to go the social work route more so was it was a little bit more versed. So if I wanted to do something else, I could. But after I graduated and doing therapy, while in both my internships over the years, it just was something that I just saw a need for. Like there wasn't people that looked like me in the field.
Yeah.
Um, so I decided to embrace it, to say the least, and just put myself in these positions and in these spaces so that we can change the narrative of what like mental health treatment looks like.
Absolutely. Like
Mm-hmm.
we social workers, therapists, we got that superpower, that touch where
Mm-hmm.
we can, off the bat, they was like, oh, I know you can help me. And I was like, not today, I'm off duty. No, I
Man,
don't help
family.
nobody. I want to help myself right now. It's definitely like
Yeah.
a connection with
Mm-hmm.
our connection with people, our interaction
Mm-hmm.
with people, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like they gravitate towards us. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
dang, okay. And that bleeding heart, as somebody called me, oh, you're a bleeding heart, but you kind of like, okay, let me help you. What you need,
Mm-hmm.
and figure it out, and let them go on their way. So
Yeah.
so I applaud you, and for you to be a black male in therapy in the mental health field is amazing, because in the Black community, we don't talk about these, as far as like talk, well,
In the
we
real
don't
way.
have
Yeah.
enough conversations and
Sure.
safe
Yeah.
places to have, like as far as like to converse with each other. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I built Social Work Sunday Tea, so we can talk about these
Mm-hmm.
things. And
In the real
today,
way.
yeah, today we're going to be talking about trauma in the Black
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm.
So what is trauma? If you can explain to the people what's
Mm-hmm.
trauma.
Um, in short, trauma. What trauma is an event that happens that most definitely like a more unfavorable event.
Mm,
So an example like trauma can be like physical abuse, sexual abuse. Also in the terms of now like more so emotional abuse. Trauma, in short, is like again like an unfavorable event that's happened.
yeah,
A lot of times there isn't any conversation or any knowledge that people are like being traumatized,
yeah,
but there are like situations where like with trauma, specifically with trauma, is more, and it can be also a life changing event, right? So like it could be like a death of somebody or witnessing. You don't have to necessarily even go through these things to consider to be trauma, right? So you can witness somebody going through these things and it be traumatic for you as well too. Whether if you see somebody, um, yourself in that person, or like you've been in maybe similar situations, or maybe you've gone through the certain traumatic events and now you're seeing somebody else going through it, can be very triggering. So that's my definition of what
absolutely.
trauma is.
Yeah, definitely. I got my little phone up here.
There you go.
You pretty much explain what trauma is. Trauma is a more personal, person's emotional response to
Hmm.
stressful experiences. It could be physical, it could be an accident, it could be
Hmm.
parental loss, it could be all types of
Hmm.
things like that. So today we're talking about trauma in the Black community. What's
Hmm.
your take when someone says trauma in the Black community? What do you think of? What are the
Hmm.
things that come to mind?
A lot, a
Yeah,
lot comes to
right.
mind.
That's
That's a
like
loaded question. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. Mm. So when we talk about black, um, black people experiencing trauma, is very, very, very complex, right? So me living in LA, I think of certain things, especially in LA,
Mhm.
um, that's can be considered trauma in our community that might not be prevalent in other places, but even just like not even the context of now, just in general, like the first thing I always think about with trauma when the black community is like, where did it begin? You know what I mean? Like with black Americans, like where did trauma begin?
Yeah.
And it started when we were shipped here, and we became cattle essentially, to white Americans. So that's where when we talk about the black trauma in the black community, we have to first look at like not only the context of what it is now, but also like looking back and seeing like where did it start, right?
Yeah.
Where did these traumas responses start? And that's from my experience and my research, like that's the starting point of um, where we have to look at when we talk about um, the black community being traumatized.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely got to go back to,
Hmm.
historically,
Yeah.
slavery, and I think,
Yeah.
and, people don't want to talk about that, but I mean, it
Hmm.
happened. And,
Yeah.
uh, the Jim Crow laws, and you have
Yeah.
all of these things that play into what
Hmm.
we have today in our society.
Yeah. Because the essence, and when we talk about, I know like you're a therapist, so we talk about like the core, right? Like usually, like when we talk about treatment, or we talk about getting to the root of the root of the problem is always the core, right? So
Right.
there's gonna be a core belief, a core concept, just getting to like the essence of everything. And now when we talk about again like trauma in the black community, this is part of it, because what the issue, the reason why it's even considered to be trauma or even considered to be relevant today is because it shows up in so many different spaces in our lives today. You know what I mean? It's not just this thing that happened and now okay, we're in a better position. But essentially, the core of everything, which is like capitalism, the core of what slavery was was for profit. You know what I mean? Like, how does those things show up in today's society, right? Like,
Yeah.
our lives are still being shown as being profitable. Whether if you dehumanize it in
Yeah.
most senses, it's seen as being profitable, right? So when we talk about trauma in the Black community, and especially talk about dehumanizing or just not putting ourselves in the position of power, even economic power, these are things that show up now because of what happened to us while we were in slavery, right? And
Absolutely.
again, I know people don't feel uncomfortable talking about these things. Even in our schools, they're starting to change the curriculum around slavery and not want to talk about these things. But these are things that are important to address because these things still show up in today's society.
Absolutely. Someone said we were born into the world surrounded by trauma from
Mm,
slavery, Jim Crow, war
mm-hmm,
on drugs, poverty, pain, and
mm,
gentrification.
mm-hmm,
Like this is still present in
mm-hmm.
2022.
Right.
I think more so, I'm an 80s baby, right? So,
Mm-hmm,
everybody's talking about the good old days. And, I remember my grandmother, she was from Denmark, South Carolina. And
mm-hmm.
I remember her telling me about picking cotton.
Yep.
And so picking cotton and she didn't her highest I don't think she graduated from high school. She didn't have a high school education. So
Mm-hmm,
they moved up here, the Great Migration from everybody from down south
mm-hmm.
all the way up
Yep.
here,
My
and just,
grandparents as well too. Yep.
right. So it's like, you have all these things um present, and it's just a melting pot of things that need to be uncovered. We might have to do a
Mm-hmm.
part two of this because
mm-hmm.
it's so much in the
Yeah.
Black community. I feel as though, this is my opinion, I think we suffer from PTSD.
In a real
uh,
way. As
in
often.
every
Yeah.
way. Yeah. So how do
Mm-hmm.
you feel about that? As far as, like, that's my
Yeah.
opinion. We
Yeah.
suffer from PTSD because we see too much. First of all, we
Yeah.
experience too much, and
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of stuff has been transferred from generation to generation, and that's why I
Mm-hmm.
kind of like came up with that concept of what not the concept of, but we talk about adverse childhood experiences,
Mm-hmm.
where childhood, things in childhood, either you as far as, like, you've seen domestic violence,
Yeah.
you have parents that had substance abuse issues,
Yeah.
poverty,
Mm-hmm.
just everything that packs into it.
Yeah.
I think more so you kind of like you can become a product of your environment.
Yeah.
That's all you know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's why I was like, African Americans, because of what's going on in the world today, we have PTSD. So what is your take on
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Nah, I think that's a great thing to talk about because with trauma in the Black community, like PTSD often goes misdiagnosed because there isn't any conversation and any context to why people are of color, specifically the Black community, are experiencing traumatic events. Um, I will say this: like, there's a couple things I want to say about this. One
Mhm.
is that the issue isn't Black people having trauma. The issue is Black people, the environment Black people are in, and the
Mhm.
circumstances we are under. You know what I mean? There's not anything wrong with us.
Right.
It's more so a systematic issue that we
Yeah.
deal with because when we talk about or when if we're discussing the context of Black people being diagnosed with PTSD, you have to really look at why is that? Why
Mhm.
is it that Black people are more traumatized than many other demographics? And I would my thought is if anybody of any culture was in a situation or predicament or had the historical trauma that we did, that the outcome would look a lot different. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And even that's just in the context of just the circumstances, not even just talking about the physical body, right? Because
Right.
the physical body of Black people is another thing we talk about historical trauma, right? Like you have like, we talk about bucks and picket nannies and people just if you're somebody of larger stature, right? Like you're more valuable because you can you can produce more children. That's what the thought
Yeah.
was. Even with Venus put it on display and her body being cut up. You know what I mean? Like these
Yeah.
are all different things that, again, with historical trauma, things we have to really, really look at and dissect. There's a great book. It's called My Grandmother's Hand. I'm not sure if you heard about it or you read it,
Okay.
but I'm starting it right now, and it's really good because what it talks about is the pain, body, and trauma, right? So the fact that like you said, you're knowing family members that pick cotton, right? Um, and what that in our bodies, like how our body responds to trauma, because with PTSD, it's again the post-traumatic stress disorder, right? So it's different than somebody actually being in the trauma and
Hmm.
having to experience these symptoms, right? Again, like when we talk about trauma, when trauma is brought up, it is when it was formally diagnosed, it was for veterans coming back from war. It
Right.
wasn't for like black, us
Right.
still being in the situation, right? So it's a lot. There's advantages of treating post-traumatic stress disorder if you're not in that traumatic event still. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
there's a difference between reliving it and still being in it, and reliving it and not being in it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's a lot of differences between black people experiencing PTSD and other demographics experience it as well too, because again with trauma, historical trauma, even going back to things that we witness or things that we learn, our
Hmm.
bodies and our nervous systems respond to things differently because of the things we experience. And a lot of this trauma, these traumatic symptoms that we experience, is inherited from
Yeah.
our ancestors. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Excuse me. So necessarily, um, it's not necessarily something that we ask for, right? It's not something that like, okay, we're black, there's something wrong with us because we're responding to this, or we may be more triggered than other people when it comes to certain situations. I think it comes to a point where we still have to recognize and realize the trauma and stuff that we experience and the historical trauma, right?
Yeah.
Because black people, we even if you haven't quote unquote, had any traumatic experiences, being a Black American, you still there's still triggers there. You know what I mean? Like you might see somebody that looks like you experiencing something, right?
Yeah.
Whether if it's like the brutality from the police and like stuff circulating social media.
Yeah.
There's also the context of bringing up like I'm gonna speak just more so on like gang banging and because I'm from LA. So like more so like gang, like even with gang culture, right? The self hate that was embedded in us. You know what I mean? Just looking at, if even somebody that looks like me, we still don't value them as a person just because they're from a certain neighborhood or from a certain set. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different things that when we talk about the pain body, when we talk about breaking down these things of historical trauma, specifically in the Black community, that we have to start delayering. And that's why, treatment for us looks a lot different because we have a lot more stuff we need to peel back before we even
Yeah.
get to that, right? And
Yeah.
even again, when we talk about the core, going back to the core, if you're peeling some of these things back, you're still going to reckon, you might realize that, it's not us. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're not the problem. Unfortunately, we have to take responsibility for our trauma, even though it's not something that was inflicted on us. You know what I mean? That's some of the big barriers with trauma as well too. Is you don't ask to be traumatized. You don't ask for these things. You don't ask to have post traumatic stress disorder. These aren't things that you ask, but when you inherit it and these things are experienced to you, then um, unfortunately, it's the responsibility of the person to try to heal from that, right? But again, when we talk about trauma in the community, you can do as much healing as you may want, even around trauma. But the fact of the system still at play, putting
Yeah.
you at a disadvantage, is something that we have to be aware about, especially like as clinicians or people participating in therapy and understanding like it's not you, you know what I mean? Like you're not the issue.
Yeah.
It's more so the systems that's at play and the historical traumas that why we're put at a disadvantage and why we're so triggered when more triggered than other people or other demographics when certain things come up.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone said post-slavery traumatic disorder.
Yeah,
Post,
post.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
definitely.
I have that book right here. Yeah, that speaks a lot on. Yeah, I was reading that as well too. Post
Yeah,
traumatic slave disorder. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's
yeah,
real. That's real, and I wish that was like a formal diagnosis. Um, but
yeah,
again, if it's not seen as being valued, I mean, there's a whole different topic. We talk about
yeah. That's a
diagnosis,
whole.
but I wish
Listen,
it
I
was
already
something.
get it.
Yeah, because there's money tied behind diagnoses, right? So
It
that's
is.
another reason why Black people may be misdiagnosed and be misdiagnosed with schizophrenia because
Yep,
some insurances pay more for schizophrenia than PTSD.
yep,
You know what I mean? That's just a fact. So we a lot of times make it just misdiagnosed. We may have all the symptoms, but it's like, oh, you're hearing voices or you're seeing things.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna mark you as schizoaffective or schizophrenic
yeah,
because reimbursable insurances will pay more for those psychotic symptoms than
yeah.
the trauma you experience.
Absolutely. That's a
Hmm.
whole.
Yeah, I want to touch on that just a bit, but yeah, that's a whole
That's a
lane of other
whole
stuff.
different. I mean, and
Yeah,
and that's
but it's
why a
still
lot of
relevant for
people.
sure.
No, no, and that's why a lot of people don't go see, um, the psychologist or psychiatrist or a
Hmm.
therapist. Well, clinical. If they are experiencing signs and symptoms of a diagnosis, they scared to go because like okay they're gonna
Yeah.
and then they're gonna put me on the medication on this type of
Hmm.
medication, increase
Hmm.
the doses. Then the doctors get paid,
Yep.
pharmaceuticals get paid. It's a
Yep.
whole dynamic with
Yep.
that, and that's traumatizing as well because it's
That's.
okay. I
Hmm.
can't I can't ventilate my thoughts and feelings without
Hmm.
you trying to always dope me up. It's like
Yeah.
you want me to stay doped up so I won't be
Hmm.
um um awakened. I
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And also like well, I say the racial trauma, and it spills over. It's dumped in our community,
Hmm.
because it's like okay, like I was talking to my daughter. I got a 13-year-old. She
Hmm.
something else. But she was like, she asked the question. She was like, "Well, um, why are we getting treated like this as Black people?" And I
Hmm.
was like, I don't have a
Yeah.
really
No
like,
answer. Yeah.
and it affects her because okay, we stay in the suburbs of Chicago, right? She stayed,
Hmm.
and we're like in a melting pot of people. We got white, Black,
Hmm.
and so I have to give her that talk. Hey,
Hmm.
certain things you can't do because of your skin color. And I hate that
Mm.
I have to do this. I'm like, you
Yeah.
can't do what Becky or Sally does. You can't do
Yeah.
that. It does not apply to you.
Hmm.
It just you just can't do it. And I hate that I have to give her that talk, but you have to because
Yeah. It's important to. Yeah.
yeah, it's really, really sad. And
Hmm.
my daughter even asked, like, well, why God keep allowing this to happen? Like, why won't
Mm.
he stop? And I was like, well, let me talk it over
Yeah.
to God then. No. Like,
Right. Right.
it's so sad that I have to have that
Yeah.
conversation, but it's so necessary. I'm like, Chelsea,
Yeah.
like you're a Black girl, they don't like some people don't like,
Yeah.
and and then they may appear to like you, but on the inside,
Hmm.
it may be something totally different. And that's
Yeah.
traumatizing too because kids want to be kids. Kids don't really
Hmm.
see color unless they're being introduced to something like that. As far as
Yeah. Hmm.
okay, no, you don't play with Black kids, no, you don't play with white kids.
Hmm.
And I try to educate her on the difference. But
Hmm.
sometimes it's hard because you see the George Floyd incident, kids
Yeah.
are kid people we're
It's tapped
African
in. Yeah.
Americans, we're traumatized. Like I was so
Yeah.
damn mad. I'm not gonna lie, I was mad. Like,
Hmm.
and then like the system is not for us and never been
Yeah.
for us. It never will be for us. Um,
Hmm.
and I just feel like it's just so much, the Breonna Taylors. I'm a black.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
many things, and it keeps
Yeah.
happening. It's like, so what do we do about that? Like, how can
Yeah.
we change? We can try to be socially and emotionally intelligent enough to be able to
Mhm.
try to change the dynamics. But if it keeps
Mhm.
slapping you in the face, like,
Yep.
oh, here
It'll
we go,
roll away.
another
Yeah.
thing. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's so traumatic.
Mhm.
And that's why I say, African Americans, I feel as though we have PTSD. We gotta deal with that,
Mhm.
indirectly, at
Mhm.
work. We have to
Mhm.
switch code. We gotta do all of
Code
that.
switch. Yeah.
I hate that. I
Mhm.
hate that. Not saying I'm and and we're labeled as, okay, this the angry black woman or the angry
Mhm.
black man.
Mhm.
No, but it's like you kind of like you're trying to insult my intelligence, and I'm gonna be like, oh
Yeah.
really? It's so many things impact in
Yeah.
that. So
Most
it's
definitely,
just
because even with the, I didn't mean to cut you off, but even with the
no,
George
go ahead.
Floyd
No, go
case,
ahead.
like, that was, that was something that, there's so many George Floyds before, and unfortunately, probably gonna be some, obviously there were more George Floyds after, right? Even with the conviction of the officer, the laws weren't changed. You know what I
No.
mean? No laws were changed. It was just the fact of the matter of him having an abuse of power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There wasn't any
Yeah.
specific laws that changed within that case. So like even like the conviction of him, and also like that sentence was like not, I don't think it was adequate to the case,
Yeah.
because it just didn't match up to like murder, quote unquote. But because he has a possibility of still getting out, um, but even with that, or I know you're talking about even just in the workspace as well too. Like, why is it the fact that we have to come with like a crown law? You know what I mean? Just for
Mm-hmm.
particularly black women to wear their hair, how it comes out their head.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I've heard on numerous occasions, like, even with the pandemic and the Zoom calls, like, most white Americans or even Latino Americans can just kind of put their hair up in any type of way. But,
Mm-hmm.
when we're at home, you have the bonnet on, or you have, or a do-rag on, or whatever it is, then you have to kind of present differently, and it's not as easy for you to get ready or like look presentable, quote unquote, whatever presentable is, because even that's a Eurocentric point of view, right? So there's a lot of different things that go into our healing processes as Black Americans, because we don't have a lot of times we don't have the resources, or even just the power to advocate for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Even in the mental health field, like, a lot of the mental health social work was started by white women. You know what I mean? So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't started by the minority.
Yeah.
It was started by white women in Europe who, they opened up a like kind of like an orphanage or some
Mm-hmm.
some sort, and as it integrated to here in this country, it more so became like people, white women wanting to become saviors of Black
Mm-hmm.
people and brown people, right? So even in our, even in LA, when you might look at, okay, there's a lot of Black therapists, or like there's a little bit more representation on the front line, but on the
Right.
administration level, there's not a lot of representation of people that look like us, and
Right.
that's the part where we have to understand. It's not always like the frontline representation, but like what's happening on the back end, because the administration is the one that develops the context of everything. But how that even relates to like trauma in the Black community is like, again, what's the healing process, or what's the
Right.
interventions, or what can we do? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, the decisions aren't necessarily made for the frontline staff, even though it may look good for an agency, but it's like what the higher ups, like,
Right.
do they really care about what's going on? You know what I mean?
Right.
Unless it's trending. Again, I always have this thing with, like, even with George Floyd, I feel like a lot of people were still, and a lot of people were because of the pandemic. So it
Yeah.
got a little bit more traction than the other killings. That's just my opinion. But I'm glad it did, nonetheless. But there needs to be like a lot more representation, a lot more activism around that topic, especially when we talk about healing in the Black community from traumatic events.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think more so keep having these spaces, this topic to discuss.
Mhm.
Someone said we have been robbed from our religion, our culture, and our God.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, I don't want to get religious. I know it's Sunday, but there, and I'll just kind of put my own personal beliefs out there. I do believe in a
That's
higher
fine.
power. I do believe in God.
Yes.
But there's a lot of manipulation. There was a lot of manipulation, especially during slavery with religion, right? Like it was like, okay, it's in the Bible that white people are more superior. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
So that context, or the context of that, and just white people being the pure people, and the manipulation of, I don't think religion is bad at all, or any religious preference, because I'm not the person to say who's right and who's wrong. But when it comes to the form of manipulation, especially within the Black community, it is very, very, very traumatic. And the saying is always, if you want to ruin a culture, take them from their food, their language, and their religion. You know
Mm,
what I mean? And give them food, religion, and language. You know what I
right.
mean? Because we didn't come over here speaking English. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I couldn't even tell you what my native tongue was. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I don't know, because that history's been erased, and I can't really track that. Especially even with ancestry.com, or I think africanancestry.com, a lot of stuff is can't really be traced because it's really unknown,
Yeah.
right? They can hypothesize and give you a percentage of what things may be, but it's not
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think more so that's a whole different subject. That's
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
whole yeah, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
But I feel as though in the black community, I want to piggyback off that. Like, do you feel as though um in the black community has the trust amongst each other, has it dwindled?
Has the trust within
Yes.
the Black community dwindled, or
Yes.
has it? That's a good question, because I feel like we're in a space where I guess more of us, especially with the use of social media,
Yeah.
are beginning to support each other a little bit more. Even just before this, I came from a black flea market in LA, and it was just all black businesses, and we talk about circulating the dollar and supporting each other. I really do feel like there is a more of a push, because there's a more of an understanding for that. But when it comes to trust and supports are two different things. I feel like,
Yeah.
because trust comes with, like, okay, if I wasn't here, can I trust you to do this, or can I trust you to on a higher? I guess the example I'll use is with banks, right? When we talk about economics and banks, a lot of people of color or black people may not trust another black person with their finances, or may
Right.
not trust other people to do these certain things. Like, we might trust each other, to maybe. I mean, sometimes, I mean, black people, we don't even like to trust to cook for each other, because we feel like our cooking is better than the next person. Our mac and cheese, like, nah, I'll make the mac and cheese because I
Yeah,
don't trust that you're gonna
yeah,
make it
yeah,
right. You know what I mean? So, yeah, the trust, I think that's an interesting question. But to answer it shortly, I feel like we don't,
yeah.
because if
Someone
we
just
did,
said that.
yeah,
Yeah, someone said that. It's
he said
never
no,
been
it's
there.
never been there.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I feel like we're in the wave of trying to change that narrative, but it's gonna take a lot of work, because we still have these ideals that were instilled in us, where we may see, again, I'm speaking more so in LA. We
Okay.
may see somebody, like, if you see somebody on the street, and you have to kind of just look at them, especially if you're pumping gas somewhere. You have to kind of look at them and see, especially as a black male, you kind of have to look at them, seeing what their next move is going to be, if they're going to come up to you, or ask you where you're from, or all that stuff,
Mhm.
right? But I'm not putting and just me on a personal level, I'm not gonna sit here and try to trust you or trust anybody if I know where I'm at. You know what I mean? if I know the danger I can be putting myself in with trusting somebody. Now, because I'm aware and I've had situations that happen to me, you know what I mean? And that just goes back to trauma, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a lot of our perpetrators of trauma may be, somebody within our community,
Yeah.
right? So I get a lot of clients that come up to me, and I always ask them like, hey, like, do you prefer a black male? Because they might have had some trauma tied around a black male, and
Mm-hmm.
I may not be a good fit, right? So you
Right.
may go with not even a black woman because there might be some other issues there, but you might
Right.
go to somebody that doesn't look like you to seek help, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think it's based on the individual, um,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as the trust factor, support and trust, again, like I feel like it's two different things. I feel like we support each other a lot, but the trust factor is something that we still need to work on.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I think more so is like, and I think in the black community, we're so geared towards, oh, you trying to one up on me. I mean,
Mm,
like it's always like that. Instead of me reaching,
yeah.
it's like crabs in a barrel.
Yep.
And I hate it. It's like that, but it's like that. Versus,
That's
you
the
have your
facts.
twos and right, your twos and fews where it's like, okay, look, if I'm on, we all on. Like if I'm eating,
Yeah.
you eating. It's not a lot of people they're not like that, and
Hmm.
a lot of people do things for their own personal gain and
Hmm.
self gratification, and
Hmm.
and that makes people not kind of like turn from African American black folks like
Right.
they doing too much, so they go to outside of the race to get
Hmm.
funding, and that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
But I've seen it so many times, where the one up, and that's like, oh no,
Hmm.
I don't want you to get on my platform because you licensed and da da da. That's what it's like. It's like
Yeah.
some sort of intimidation, or you're intimidated by the person instead of like,
Hmm.
okay, I see what you're doing. Come on with me. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I think we don't have enough of that.
Hmm.
Even in Chicago, or I think this is worldwide, as far as
Yeah. Hmm.
every community where, the poverty and, I know here in Chicago, we used to have the projects, we had a Rockwell, Pagrini
Hmm.
Green. I never lived, I knew people that lived there, and I thought it was
Hmm.
fascinating because I never been in the projects or, what I mean? Things like that. And
Yeah.
the different struggles, talk to people that have loved ones like that been institutionalized, in jail, and that
Mm.
was, and we didn't talk about how the black man is stripped away from the household.
I haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's definitely one of the I think is more traumatic than anything because society kind of like placed it at, oh, you don't need a man, or you don't need a man
Hmm.
in the household as the head,
Mm.
and I was just
Yeah.
like,
And there's
who said that? No,
yeah,
I
but
need a
there
man, and I need him to be the head of my
yeah.
child. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
that's how it should be. That's
Yeah.
how
And
it's
that
supposed to be.
right.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And there's again, I'm a social worker first. I know my tag is Terence the therapist, but I'm a social worker first. So
Listen,
you have to
yeah,
think about the systems, right? The systems that are in place for us to, and I was also sweet because I want to have respect for everybody,
yeah,
whether it's like man or woman, just having masculine energy in the home,
yeah,
more so, but. Um, when we talk about just the absence of a male presence in the black community, again, it's more profitable to not, within the family. I will speak just more so in LA because we have a lot of programs that, if the father's not there, then, there's a lot of more money, government funding you can get as
yeah,
opposed to if the father is there. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So like if
Hmm.
I think it puts the black family at the position of enabling that that we may be not dependent on the man to provide. We're maybe depending on government aid to provide,
Right, right, right.
which in some certain cases can be beneficial, right? Because sometimes the absence of the male isn't necessarily intentional. Like the male may have passed away or something may have happened,
Hmm.
right? But in the grand scheme of things, the majority, you know, that's not always the case. You know what I mean? So
Right.
the system's been put into play, especially, I mean, I'll speak more so on LA County, where it's better for the women not to have the man around because there's more benefits to that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can get EBT, you can get WIC, you can get out here is like CalFresh, you can get, you know, you're more eligible for Section 8. You know what I mean? You're
Yep.
more eligible for SSI if you want to get that because, you know, you not only don't, you, because you don't have that extra income, right?
Yep.
But if we're getting those things, what are we losing, right? We're losing the more essential things that, you know, what's the structure of a family. You know what I mean? So that again, even with that intent, we rely more so again on the systems to educate us. You know what I mean? Educate our kids, or educate, and again puts us in the position of needing an outside source to survive. You know what
Yep.
I mean? So there's so many things that may be taught. And again, I'm not speaking bad on, you know, single mothers or even single fathers that's taking government aid. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
But when you break down, you know, when you break everything down, and you know, people black, I'll speak more so on the black community, having these resources is there is no benefit for the man to be president. You know what I mean? Like if financially there really isn't, but there's a lot more that goes into finances, that than just like not having the male president, the man or the male president. But that even that going back to historical trauma, right? Where did that start? There was
Yeah.
a separation in a lot of families during slavery.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
we never had in America, we never had the opportunity to build the concept of having strong families or a family setting, right? Is more. It was always, you know, one person, one provider, or even with the male would have sex with multiple women to have, you know, produce more slaves. Um, a lot of times the children may be sold off, and or the woman may be sold off, or especially young girls would be sold off because now they're having their periods, so they can get pregnant now. So, you know, you might have a slave that's a great grandmother, and she might only be like, you know, probably 60, early, you know, mid 60s to 50s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot when we talk about the black family and the trauma behind that, and
Yeah.
understanding like what systems were put at play and what systems are currently, you know, put in play, for, you know, the family not to be, you know, intact, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Whether it's, you know, there's a handicap in the family, which, you know, which is the one parent household instead of the two parent
Yeah.
household.
Yeah, they definitely try to dismantle the black family, the structure of it. And
Hmm.
like they talked about in the 70s where, oh, you had to kick the man out. And I even heard some of my family they had to, oh, you're not gonna mess up my good section 8, or you ain't gonna mess up my. I
You
was
can't
like,
stay here. Yeah, I got inspection coming
oh,
up.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I mean, it was designed to be that way. And
Hmm.
we, oh no, it's like the mind, they shift the mindset of the woman to be this masculine, masculine energy, which
Hmm.
is, I had to check myself on that
Hmm.
numerous, like, oh, I ain't never said I ain't need no man, but I just
Hmm.
like, okay, I have to do it, and they put
Yeah.
me in positions that we have to do it. We're gonna do it on our own,
Yeah.
with assistant, without assistance, you gonna make a way. And so
Yep.
that's how black people have been so the force to be reckoned with. And
Hmm.
and we prevail.
Yeah.
We definitely conquer, and we definitely do what we have to do.
Yeah.
That's so true. It's in Mississippi. Okay. um Losing the entire family structure. Okay. Family structure of
Hmm.
the black family. Yeah, definitely. I
Hmm.
think more so than anything. Yeah, but I mean, that's how it is, how it goes.
Yeah. That's real. That's
Absolutely.
real. So I love the there's a lot of pages like Express Black Man. There was actually
Hmm.
one of my frat brothers went viral recently, and I just reached out to him like because he was like cooking with his son, or like he has this thing with him and his son is on his page a lot. So
Okay.
I feel like, you know, there is a push for us to, you know, especially the male, being present in the
Yeah.
child's life, which I'm very happy to see. You know, but again, the sad part is that we make that as like a privilege, right? Because I know I grew up and knew my dad. I grew up in a 2 parent household. I remember I have a friend that when I told him when I was in college I was going back home, I was like, yeah, I'm about to go home and see my mom and dad. He's like, you know your dad? And I was like, yeah, I know,
Mhm.
I know my dad. He's like,
Yeah.
what? He's
Yeah.
like, you're the first black dude I ever knew that knew their dad. And I was like,
Yeah.
really?
Wow.
He's like, yeah. And he was shoot, I mean, he was over 20. He was like 20, 20, 21, 22. So
Wow.
yeah, yeah. So it's still an
Sad.
issue, and it's something
Yeah.
that we still most definitely need to continue to talk
Yeah.
about it. Mhm.
Absolutely. So what are your thoughts? We're gonna end it soon, but what because this has to be a part two because so many
Yeah.
questions
Mhm.
um formulating. I don't want to hold you long,
No,
but
no,
no,
yeah, yeah,
I
we're good.
just think that so how can we heal from this? Like as far as the trauma, the how can we move forward?
Mm,
What are your thoughts on moving forward? Um,
yeah,
regarding trauma in the Black community, how can we move
right.
forward?
I think we need to first recognize it's an issue,
Yeah,
because realizing that it's not an issue if we're not realizing it's an issue, then we can't necessarily heal from it. Or if you don't see it as a problem, then we can't try to
yeah,
find a solution, right?
yeah,
I think that's the first step is understanding a lot of these unnecessary normals are still happening, right?
yeah,
Like we're still, black women is the most disrespected person in the world, in my opinion, right? So that's an issue. The black male, again, we're talking about the context of like gang banging and things that
yeah,
we see and things that we witness and
yeah,
murders or like growing up in a single parent household, or even to kids being in the foster system
yeah,
and mass incarceration.
yeah,
Understanding like all these things that put us at a disadvantage is not normal, and it's unnecessary normal. It's something that, again, with our pain bodies, we talk about black people being like very strong and very resilient, but it's like these are survival techniques that we do. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like it's a fact. It's an
yeah,
issue that we know how to deal with certain things as opposed to other people, right? There's an old joke. I don't know if like Steve Harvey or somebody said it was black people's lights go off. White people's lights go off. They call the electric company. Black people's lights go off. We light a candle. You know
yeah,
what I mean? So
yeah,
we're always like, um, we're always in the position of trying to figure things out, and this isn't something that we should have to do. But unfortunately, again, we have to recognize that these things aren't okay. These things are not things that any person should be going through. Nobody should be having to witness the friends being killed at such an early age. And nobody should have to, be killed by the police or harassed by the police unjustly. You know what I mean? There's no just way for the police to harass you, but are experiencing, you know, white supremacy in schools, and
yeah,
having to, even say like your life matters. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
these things are not normal. Like we should not have to do these things, but unfortunately we do. So again, one is recognizing that as an issue.
yeah,
Um, on the more personal individual level, when we talk about like traumatic experiences, I think it's always good to seek help. It's always good to seek a profession, excuse me, a professional with these things. So, for example, like if that is going to therapy, um, if it comes to a point where you feel like you just need to talk to somebody, I think that's appropriate.
yeah,
Um, but I also want to kind of give the caveat that healing is not a linear journey. It goes up
mhm,
and down, right? Under circumstances, under like your person. And the unfortunate part, that the sad reality is, the healing doesn't necessarily mean things are going away. Like it
yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, I'm all better now, like, and as if nothing happened, right?
yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
times it comes to like understanding where you are at this moment and how to move forward, right? I
yeah,
saw this post that I kind of want to that brought me to, like, when we talk about healing is, with the GPS, when you reroute, or when you talk about your healing journey and your GPS goes somewhere, um, and you might have went on the wrong road. Your GPS doesn't say go all the way back and start all over. It says
Yeah,
start where you're at now and just keep going.
yeah,
Whether it is make that left or make that right, or it might take maybe a little longer because you took the wrong road, right?
yeah,
Because there is ups and downs in the healing process, but I do advise everybody to seek out help, and with the understanding of there are a lot of systems in play that create our trauma. And also, when you are seeking help, don't get discouraged if you don't find a black therapist. Don't get discouraged if your couple times like it's been rough. Like you always have the right to change providers. You always have the right to switch your therapist if you
yeah.
want to, because with voluntary treatment like that, those are your options. And just don't give up. Like that's one thing. You always have to have faith that things will get better for yourself.
Yeah.
Because without the faith, then everything else is dead. Without the thought of things can get better, then it's without that you're not. It's the healing process can't begin to begin to start.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. That's good. We definitely. I like that GPS. I'm gonna have to use it.
Yeah, I do that. I posted on my story today, so most
Okay.
definitely check it out. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take it. I'm gonna be
yeah, take it
like,
and
let
run
me
it.
get
That's
this.
what I did. Yeah. Well, I saw it. I was
Oh,
like, man,
so
that's fire.
yeah, no, that was
Yeah.
really really good. But I mean, it puts you in the perspective. Like, yeah, just keep going, keep going, keep going.
Hmm.
And I think in for Black people, for the community, I definitely it's definitely time to speak up. We're speaking up. Um, be more proactive than reactive,
Hmm.
and
Absolutely.
challenge the state reps, challenge the aldermen, challenge.
Hmm.
We need those type of supports in these mental health centers. We need everything. We need everything
Absolutely.
to be able to sustain and support African American people,
Hmm.
as a whole. It's
Yeah.
okay to not to be okay. Well, we keep saying that, but it's like, okay,
Yeah.
real. It is like, because it be some days as a social worker, even in
Hmm.
like, I don't feel okay. No,
Yeah.
I go see my therapist like,
Yeah.
this is what and I just
Yeah.
all out. I think just have to be I just want to encourage everybody to be gentle with ourselves too,
And the real way. Yeah.
and take it day by day, because like we are resilient, right? But at the same
Hmm.
time, we have to be gentle and be like,
Yeah.
okay, let me take a step back, let me reset. And
Hmm.
I think in the Black community, we have to reset. I think more so because I
Hmm.
always think about, like, how do we go from a Dr. King, a Booker T. Washington, a Marcus Garvey,
Hmm.
and then we get here, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, what are we
Yeah,
doing?
because every system we tried to, Marcus Garvey was deported,
Yeah,
Dr. King was killed,
yeah,
Malcolm X was killed,
yeah,
Huey P. Newton was killed. Every system or every person that's kind of stepped up now, now the issue is, or the thought again, this is vicarious trauma is like I'm gonna get killed if I speak up or say anything,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, but this is where the point is like we have to still have faith and still create our own systems, and not always try to integrate. I know this is a whole different topic, but always
yeah. No, no, no. It's
just
cool.
trying
It's
to,
cool.
yeah, just try. I would say this, just trying to find somebody, especially when we come to therapists, that it can relate to you, right? But also challenge you and empathize with you when we talk about like trauma in the Black community, because a lot, there's many therapists out there that don't look like us, that don't understand. Not necessarily saying they're bad therapists,
Right,
but it's going to be very hard. It'd be hard for me. I can only imagine like it'd be hard for me to be be a therapist for somebody who was Armenian or somebody who was Jewish with all their historical trauma.
right,
You know what I mean? That's just real. Like it's not saying like I'm a bad therapist, but I can't
right.
relate to that because I don't know the context of that, and I don't have to. That's my privilege of that aspect is I don't have to deal with that. I deal with my own stuff in my own
Yeah,
culture. You know what
yeah,
I mean? So again, it's not saying there's bad therapists that aren't Black, but you might benefit from seeing somebody that looks like you because there's a lot more understanding behind your healing process and what's going on with you.
yeah. Because that we can be able to connect. And I
Mhm.
said that before, I was talking to my mom about that. I'm like, hey, no shade,
Mhm.
but I need somebody to know what I'm going through,
Mhm.
like on
Yeah.
a daily basis, especially, at work. They piss
Mhm.
me off at work. I'm just gonna put it out there. I
Mhm.
be stressed. Like it's
Mhm.
just the higher ups, the expectation level,
Mhm.
and they don't look like me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
you don't even know how to handle the culture of the building, but yet you barking out
Yeah.
orders. It doesn't work
Yeah.
like so. It's
Right.
like I have to get myself together. My friend Sarah be like, "Kid, get it together,"
Mm.
and I'm like,
Mm.
"I'm about to," and I don't want to be that the angry black woman. Like,
Right.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew it.
All
And I try
around.
to
See.
contain myself. Yeah, I be trying to contain myself because I can
Mhm.
go Hulk smash, like everything
Mhm.
be destroyed, and then I
Mhm.
walk up out there, but they don't
Right.
understand the what be. I can't talk about it online right now, but I have to talk about it
Yeah.
in
No,
the
no, no. I
private.
understand. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I've been there, and I'm like,
Listen,
yeah.
they be testing. It's like they
Mhm.
poking, like, oh, how many times you going? It's like, come on now, like I got
Yeah.
enough stuff going on, and here you go adding on, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to help the people. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm just for the people, for the culture, for me. At the end of the
Absolutely.
day, and the majority of the population in the building, in my business building, is Black and Hispanics. So it's like,
Mhm.
it's a whole dynamic with that, but it's
Mhm.
it's okay to be not to not be okay. It's okay to see a
Mhm.
therapist. Let's heal the Black community at one podcast at a time,
Yeah.
one awareness at a time, putting that
Mhm.
out there, that information, the community awareness, everything
Mhm.
out there, so the people can heal,
Yeah.
and so we can be able to move forward, go
Absolutely.
home,
Yeah.
you know um yeah, so yeah.
Mhm.
Any last
Yeah.
thoughts?
Um, I think you did well. I just want to just thank you for like well, my last thought is just to thank you for doing, these the Sunday tea
Thank you.
conversations, and putting the awareness out there, is because we need that. You know what I mean? We need these platforms. We need people who look like you in these spaces and representing us. You know what I mean? So I just want to appreciate you and everything you're doing, and I just yeah, I want to just keep following your journey because I love what you're doing.
You gonna have to
Yeah,
come to
for real.
Chicago. Like I know you all,
Man, it's
the
too cold,
world.
dog. I had the opportunity to go, I think, a little while ago, and I was like,
Okay.
why?
Is
But
it,
that's a reason now. So, because I mean, I'm spoiled out here. I really am. Because I see snow, and I'll be like, I'm watching y'all weather and stuff now, and I'll be seeing you tweet stuff. Oh, you shoveling what? You shoveling snow?
I use that broom. I use a broom. I be like, hey,
Yeah, nah,
my mom
but I'll
said, get
tap in if I ever go to
yeah.
Chicago. I'll tap in with you for sure.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
cool. Kick it, all that good stuff. Yeah, you're
yeah.
welcome here.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I never been to California. My
Oh,
daughter
for
has.
real?
No, I never
Oh,
been
wow.
at all. And
That's yeah.
yeah,
A
so
lot of people be coming to Cali, LA.
I'd be like,
Not a lot of people don't go to the Bay,
nah,
but
ain't
yeah, when
nobody.
people uh,
You know, but no,
see,
but it's cool. But it's cool. I want to say
mhm,
thank you so much for getting on
absolutely,
the podcast.
you're welcome.
Everybody tune in next week. For Social Work Sunday Tea is going to
Hmm.
be amazing, amazing, amazing.
Hmm.
You guys have an awesome Sunday, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, thank you.